Hi everyone, I'm Mia Ferris, and today I'm going to be showing you guys my research project on is Taylor Swift the Didion or Friedan of our time? Just to briefly discuss what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to give you guys a short definition of what feminism is based on what we've discussed in this class, and then I'm also going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the main people that we're going to be discussing today, and that's going to be Betty Friedan, Joan Didion, and of course Taylor Swift. And then we're going to move on to the meat of the project, which is what kind of feminist is Taylor Swift? To start off with, what is feminism? Now, we've talked about feminism a lot throughout this class. However, I really want to highlight this definition that I have for you right here: the belief that women should be allowed the same rights, power, and opportunities as men, to be treated in the same way or set in the activities intended to achieve. Now, obviously, we've talked about a very wide scope of what feminism really is, but we also have discussed how feminism doesn't only align with just women. This is not only advocating for people of color, queer people, and more, but also too that you don't have to be feminine or you don't have to be necessarily a woman to advocate for women's rights. Also, too, collectively, feminism to its core is its choices and equality. We want to be able to think for ourselves, make decisions for ourselves, critically think, while also being treated as an equal to other people. Okay, guys, time to get to the fun stuff. Now, who is Betty Friedan? Betty Friedan, we discussed her briefly in class, however, diving in a little bit more into her background and what she actively believed in. She was a writer and an activist, of course, mainly known for her work in the 60s and the 70s. As we all know, she was a very vocal lady about her opinions and her beliefs. However, she's also known for her book, The Feminine Mystique, which discussed the dissatisfaction of women when men returned from World War II. Obviously, women were used to these more domesticated roles, and when men left for the war, they were actually able to take on real working jobs and actually be like useful in society. And of course, when men returned back, they kind of expected things to go back to quote unquote normal. And this is just like an active accumulation of how women felt during this time. Um, Mainly some of the things that she actively believed in. I want to quickly touch on workplace equality. She fought for women's rights to pursue careers, equal pay, as well as maternity leave. And she was also very active when it came to advocating for reproductive rights. Of course, she was pro birth control and abortion, and she was also an active Roe v. Wade supporter. And one of the ways that she did this and advocated for reproductive rights is through a company called the National Organization of Women, also known as NOW, which she was the co-founder of and the first president. And also, too, she was a big advocate for gender roles in education, and she constantly criticized universities and these big institutions for pushing women to pursue marriage rather than, stimulating intellectual growth. And so, through her activism and her work, she was able to actually encourage women to pursue higher education. I also want to quickly touch on um, just the fact that she did not have this like victim mindset and didn't want to be seen in the victim mindset. And one of the things that I think really stood out to me when we were talking about her in class was the quote that she shared when she was kind of like taking back what she said about her husband being an abuser. She said that briefly in the press, and kind of like to take back what she said this famous quote: "My husband was not a wife beater, and I was no passive victim of a wife beater. We fought a lot, and he was bigger than me." This quote spent shivers down my spine, but I think it just really shows the kind of woman that Betty Friedan truly is and how she didn't want to be seen as meek or as a victim, especially when she's advocating for these really big things for women. And she was trying to be that stronghold for people, and I think that just really shows to her character. Personally, she, in my opinion, really aligns with Taylor Swift's song Slut, just because the song is about how, Taylor Swift was really condemned for just her actions towards, wanting to pursue love and men and like whatever that may be. But I also think that just like Betty Friedan faced a lot of criticism for just being very loud and outspoken. And I think that both Taylor Swift's story and Betty Friedan's story really align through this song. Okay, next, Joan Didion. Now, I know we all know who Joan Didion is. However, just to briefly go over her background, she's a writer and a journalist, particularly known for her work, both like her personal work, but also for her work in Vogue, where she really got her big break. She released many different books and essay compilations that talked about so many things, including politics, social issues, as well as just her own general personal experiences, especially towards things like grief. I want to highlight Slouching Towards Bethlehem, which is a collection of her essays, which talked about particularly the political and social climate of the 1960s. Betty Friedan, she won a lot of awards for her work, and one of the main things about her and what she believed in during this time is that she really did not align with the modern narrative at the time for the feminist movement, or as we know, the second wave. And in fact, she even considered herself an anti feminist. And I think that when we hear this, we think that's kind of distraught, but kind of going into what she actually actively believed in, it really makes a lot more sense and why we can still consider her a feminist, even though personally she didn't advocate or align herself with that at the time. She was a big, big component to pursuing like personal autonomy, just that like women should have their own choices and have the be able to make their own choices. She loved being a mother. She loved being a wife. And I think that just the narrative around kind of going against the grain, particularly things that even like Betty Friedan was pushing, like trying not to condemn this like modern society and this like nuclear family. She was a big advocate for that, and she loved her roles that she had in her household, and that was her safe haven and that was her home. And she was really good about separating her home and her work, and for her that was just like what she advocated for and what she truly believed in. And that was kind of why she didn't align herself with the feminist movement at the time. And she was also just a really big believer of like power and agency, and she lived outside this like victim mindset and believed that women had power in their everyday roles. A lot of the press about the second wave of feminism was just that like by domesticating women we were taking away our power. And she felt powerful as a woman being a mother and being a wife, and that's she loved her family and there was a lot of power in that. And I think that that also just like truly aligns with Joan Didion being a feminist, even though she didn't necessarily align herself with the definition of that during this time period. For me, I really think that Joan Didion embodies the song State of Grace, particularly just the lyrics of like, she's a state of grace, this is a worthwhile fight, and love is a ruthless game. I just think that like for Joan Didion, that was the game that she wanted to play, and she loved her family, and she wasn't going to let anything tear that away from her. Okay, guys, moving on to the fun stuff. Who is Taylor Swift? Now, I hope you guys know who Taylor Swift is, but obviously, brief background check. She's one of the biggest pop stars of our time, and she has a net worth of over $1.6 billion. And she has made a name for herself all on her music, all on her own. She started her career in 2006 with her title album, Taylor Swift, aka Debut, and ever since she has released 11 studio albums covering a multitude of genres, including country, pop, folk, etc. In 2019, her original label, Big Machine Records, sold the rights to all of her music to an evil man named Scooter Braun. And ever since, Taylor Swift obviously has made it her mission to re-record all of her stolen albums, and the only one she has left to do is Debut and Reputation. Personally, I'm still waiting on that Rep TV announcement, but time will come. Throughout her 20 years in the industry, she has really taken control of her platform and kind of delved into that political sphere when it comes to her advocacy. First, artistic control. Obviously, by her re-recording her albums, she believes that she deserves the right to not only own her work but have the correct compensation for it, which she is actively doing and pursuing and preaching. Also, too, fighting injustice. As we know, she did have a sexual assault case. It happened during her Red era, where there was literally photo evidence of this man in a recording studio reaching under her skirt. And even then, she was kind of being contested for this. And she sued for $1 just to kind of show women that it's okay to speak up and advocate for yourselves, that this truly wasn't about the money and that it was about advocacy and just like proving that, women have voices and that like they need to be heard. And then, of course, LGBTQ plus rights. And she advocated mainly for her friends as well as just like generally people in the community. We see this mainly within her Lover album, which happened in 2019 with different songs like You Need to Calm Down, which is just showing her stance when it comes to people of the LGBTQ plus community and advocating for them as they are equals. But now this begs the question, what kind of feminist is Taylor Swift? In my personal opinion, through my research, I believe that Taylor Swift most embodies feminism like Betty Friedan. Both Taylor Swift and Friedan are loud and proud about what they believed in. They are not trying to be these like quiet voices in a crowd. They want their fans and the people who are following them to know what they're advocating for and hopefully get behind their reform. Also, too, neither of these women comply with the poor behavior of men. They are strong and they are advocating, whether that be Betty Friedan and just advocating for, women's equality in different spaces, or Taylor Swift, fighting for rights to her music and rights for just like her body to like not be, I don't know, sexually assaulted. All those things I think really comply with each other, and I think that's just like a beautiful story. Also, too, workplace equity. Obviously, that's something that Betty Friedan advocated for, but truly, like Taylor Swift advocate for this as well. Just being able to pursue the rights to her own music, that's being treated equal in the workforce. And then just advocating for multiple communities. Taylor Swift obviously has advocated for people in the LGBTQ plus realm, and I feel like both Betty Friedan and Taylor Swift are ahead of their time, and I think that just resembles each other. Now, I don't want to discredit Joan Didion. I think that there are definitely elements that Taylor Swift embodies to Didion as well. However, for the sake of my thesis in this project, in my personal opinion, through what I have read and what I've researched, Taylor Swift, in my eyes, is a wonderful feminist, and she is someone who is proud about that. And I think that more so aligns with the ideas of Betty Friedan. As we are nearing the end of the semester, I just want to leave off by talking about this song. I think this really embodies what we've discussed and learned throughout this class, and also what I've really delved into throughout the research of this project. The Albatross is one of my favorite songs, and personally, one of the most underrated songs that Taylor Swift has ever written. And the words read, "Wise men once said, one bad seed kills the garden, one less temptress, one less dagger to sharpen. Lock me up in the towers, and I'd visit in your dreams, and they tried to warn you about me. Cross your thoughtless heart, only liquor anoints you. She's the albatross, she is here to destroy you. The devils that you know reign worse hell than a stranger. She is the death you chose, and you're in terrible danger." To me, these lyrics symbolize just coming together and being strong, not letting men tear you down, and just advocating for what you believe in. And you know that these all three of these women, they're forces to be reckoned with, and they have been given a platform and they have rose to fame for a reason. And I just think that this is a beautiful conclusion to everything that we've learned, as well as this amazing class. Thank you so much.